No secret that South Louisiana is still feeling the impacts of Hurricane Ida. Hurricane season is not over yet, and some may be suffering from more than just loss of property. Raise your hand if you have anxiety from the storm. I know I do. Well, with that said, we have asked Susan Harrington, a licensed therapist from Maison Vie, to join us to talk about some tips on how to deal with this storm anxiety. Susan, welcome to the show.
Good morning and happy October. It's so good to be here.
It is so good that you are here because, obviously I moved to Texas after Hurricane Katrina, but this was the first time there was a major storm that hit me in my adult age. And I can honestly tell you I have storm anxiety, and that is why I am so glad we are talking to you this morning. My first question I want to ask you is, how do people who experience stress each hurricane season deal with this anxiety?
You know, it's important first for us to normalize and to realize what's happening. Our body and our mind is supposed to have a reaction to anxiety. We're supposed to do that. When something's happening and our bodies go, oh, wait, danger, danger, we're supposed to have this anxiety that happens. It's intentional because then our heart rate goes up and our brains get more oxygen, so we think a little clearer. Now, when people learn of fear, so they associate the storm with danger, like what happened after Hurricane Katrina, our little kids learn thunder means somebody's going to die. They made this really direct connection that learned fear results in a high distress level mentally and an overreaction of the anxiety. So you get more of the cortisol and all the other neurohormonal transmitters that happen. And so then we do quick fixes that are ineffective. Like addiction, like hiding under the quilts for little ones, doing these things that are not effective.
And you are actually bringing us some effective strategies on how to get through hurricane season, get through hurricane anxiety. What are some of your tips?
So these things that are listed here are about a change in how we perceive life and how we react with it because of our perceptions. So if I believe in taking blame, then I'm not somebody who takes responsibility. And so it's important to take responsibility for what I can, as an example. An adjustment in our perspectives in this list of items is an important piece because that will help build resiliency. We learned that through years of research after Hurricane Katrina. The families that stuck together, lived together, and made it through mentally with mental health, they had resiliency. And these are the things that were common across them. And
Very interesting. And I think it's important to note that not only if you're having anxiety now to use these tips, but also as we continue to go through this hurricane season to adopt these as well.
Exactly. Like making this perspective a life event will help across the board. Just like when we do mindfulness practices like yoga and deep breathing, those things, journal writing, there's a list of them. Some people think they're corny, some people don't, but there's quite a creative list of them. Even going out and getting physical training is considered a mindfulness practice that we can do that are all good, but doing them on a daily basis is what teaches our neurological system, when I'm stressed, this is what I do. And so the cortisol levels balance out with the dopamine levels and the serotonin levels, and then we're not as anxious when we do it over days and time.
Very important. And I'm curious, Susan, I stayed here for the hurricane, and there were really three different types of anxiety. My dad worked for the Sewage and Water Board during Hurricane Katrina, so he had some type of anxiety. My grandmother was in the house by herself. She was afraid water was going to get into the home because of that anxiety from Hurricane Katrina. Then me, it was my first time, so I was over here like, oh my goodness. Is there one type of hurricane anxiety?
So there's not like different types of anxiety. We have different causes of anxiety, and we have different reactions as human beings when we feel anxious, but there's not different types. So what we have are some overarching causes when we think about it diagnostically. So we can either have a fear of something like a hurricane or someone like an abuser. So we can have those things. They can also be much smaller. Like you've heard fear of spiders and elevators and closed spaces and things like that. So we can have that type of fear. It's called a phobia. Or we can have a neurological imbalance inside these stress hormones that I mentioned earlier. In those situations, people usually say, I just feel anxious and I just don't know why. Like it makes no sense. I don't know what I'm thinking. I have no clue what's going on. I just feel anxious. That means that the stress hormones in their bodies are out of balance. And typically medication is a really good event for that.
Very interesting. And I'm curious, Susan, we're running out of time, but
Oh,
I want to ask you, how do we know if we need to really contact a professional?
cool. So there's just a list of things that are really simple. If our heart rate increases, if our abdomen gets really tense, tied up in knots, if our muscles get tense, if we feel physical fatigue, that's important. If we have a loss of concentration, if our sleep is disturbed, those sorts of things, as well as this list that's on the board here, that when we have these events and they're causing us distress, like we look at the lady in the image that's put up, then we need to contact a professional. If we're more aggressive, if we're moody and really sensitive, we need to contact a professional. There's some specific skills we can learn to put in place that will help relax and relieve these symptoms.
Very interesting, Susan. Moral of the story, know your body, and if you need help, reach out. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. And hey, if you are in need of help, Maison Vie is located at 1799 Stump Boulevard in Tarrytown. To set up an appointment, you can give them a call at 504-452-5937 or log on to MaisonVieNewOrleans.com. After the break, we're talking with Irma Thomas about her new documentary. Join us in just a few minutes. Stay right there.